Right now, New Jersey Attorney General Guber Graywall is holding a press conference at the state police station in Newark. He and other officials there are expected to discuss the takedown of a major opioid mill in the region. Let's listen in live.
Drug distribution centers. Based on our preliminary investigation, we believe that the heroin packaged at this illegal drug mill may be linked to more than 80 We believe that the heroin packaged at this illegal drug mill may be linked to more than 80 overdose deaths over the last 12 months. And while we may have shut down the operation, we believe that a significant amount of these highly dangerous drugs remain on the streets. Our investigation indicates that the heroin produced at this mill was laced with fentanyl, a powerful opioid, where even the smallest amounts of the drug, the equivalent of a few grains of sand, can kill you instantly. And we're here today to warn the public about the ongoing danger that these drugs present. Here's what we've learned so far. The drug mill operated out of a luxury apartment in Harrison, New Jersey, less than a block away from the PATH station and right down the street from the soccer arena. Like many mills, this particular mill had stations set up. Stations where drug dealers, not chemists, mixed fentanyl and heroin using coffee grinders while wearing latex gloves and respirators, and then packaged that fentanyl laced with heroin into individual wax packages, wax envelopes that were stamped with a logo or name on them. In fact, our investigators seized 43 rubber stamps at this mill, each one bearing a different name or logo used to brand the drugs. And over the past week, law enforcement officers have been meticulously reviewing the evidence, comparing the stamps found at this particular mill with those found at overdose scenes across this state. And they've come to the preliminary conclusion that 25 of these ink stamps can be linked to drug overdoses over the last 12 months, which will be the period of time relevant to the numbers I'm sharing now. 3 of these stamps appear to be linked to a particularly deadly mixture of heroin and fentanyl. One, the Tom Brady stamp, has been linked to 19 deaths and another 23 non-fatal overdoses. A second one, NyQuil, is linked to 12 deaths. And a third, Blue Magic, is linked to 7 more. I can't stress enough how dangerous these drugs are. In total, we suspect that the stamps recovered at this particular mill may be linked to 84 overdose deaths and another 143 non-fatal overdoses that occurred in this state over the last 12 months. Taken together, this would account for approximately 1 out of every 40 opioid-related deaths that occurred in New Jersey over the last 12 months. Now, based on the amount of drugs seized, law enforcement estimates that this mill was likely producing up to 15,000 individual doses of fentanyl-laced heroin per day. Given this volume, it is likely that some of these doses remain in circulation across the region. Now, it goes without saying that residents of New Jersey shouldn't use heroin of any type, but this warrants a special appeal to the public. We know that our state is home to far too many people struggling with the disease of addiction, people who are in desperate need for their next fix. But we ask them that no matter what challenges you're facing in your life, if you see heroin stamped with any of the brands or logos on these particular charts, please stay away from it. Your next fix very likely could be your last. And if you encounter any one of these stamps, please notify law enforcement. Many departments across our state and many county prosecutors across our state allow individuals to turn in drugs and paraphernalia, no questions asked. And we direct you to contact your county prosecutors for more information concerning such locations. We're still in the very early stages of this particular investigation, but let me provide you some additional details about our case. Law enforcement has arrested 3 individuals, Timothy Guest, William Woodley, and Sianel Arama. And I want to be very clear about this too. They are charged with drug offenses. No one has yet been charged for any of the 84 deaths that may potentially be linked to this mill. We clearly have much more work to do, and we intend to continue working with all of our partners to determine who, if anyone, should be held responsible for those overdoses. Here's the other thing about today's announcement. It also reflects a shift in how we investigate and prosecute opioid cases. Our investigations show that in some cases, as you can see on these boards, a large number of overdose deaths can be traced back to a single source, often a supplier that indiscriminately mixes fentanyl with heroin. And so we're focusing our resources on identifying those sources and cutting them off at their choke points. This work is funded in part by a $2.8 million federal grant we received last fall from the Department of Justice. With that money, the state police has established an opioid enforcement task force, which is targeting heroin and fentanyl mills across our state. But we also know at the same time that we can't arrest our way out of this problem. That's why we continue to pair our enforcement efforts with innovative treatment and prevention strategies. That includes our Operation Helping Hand program, which is designed to divert low-level drug offenders out of the criminal justice system and into the treatment system, as well as our Prescription Fraud Investigation Strike Force, which is targeting corrupt doctors and pill mills, all under the Office of NJ Cares, which we established a little bit more than a year ago. There's much more work to do to end this crisis, but today we're getting a little bit closer to solving the problem. Now, today's announcement would not have been possible without the extraordinary assistance of our federal, our county, and our local partners, some of whom you'll be hearing from. And we'll take your questions concerning today's announcements after you've heard from those partners. But before I hand it off to our next speaker, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our first Assistant Attorney General who led this effort on behalf of the Office of Attorney General, and that's Jennifer Davenport. She has a particular passion for tackling this opioid crisis and comes to us from the DEA. So I want to thank Jennifer for her efforts in this regard. Let me hand it off to Captain Greg Demeter from the New Jersey State Police, who will talk to you a little bit more about the details of the investigation. He'll be followed by Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Brett Breyer of U.S. Homeland Security Investigations. Captain Demeter.
Thank you, General. Good morning. I'd like to begin by thanking all the detectives of the New Jersey State Police Violent and Organized Crime Control North Bureau and our partners in our recently created Opioid Enforcement Task Force. They would be the Cliffside Park Police Department, Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, Passaic County Prosecutor's Office, Morris County Sheriff's Office, the Morris County Prosecutor's Office, Passaic County Sheriff's Department, and the Morris County Prosecutor's Office. They are members of our northern faction of the Opioid Enforcement Task Force. Also collaborating on this effort has been the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office, the Newark Police Department, who we've shared a long history of collaboration with in many areas, and the Harrison Police Department, who was instrumental during the takedown of the mill and helping to arrest some of the individuals who fled that mill, as well as securing the scene for us to properly catalog and collect the evidence. Finally, we have the United States Homeland Security Investigations, who I will detail later. We have been working with this case, working on this case for over a month, as well on the prosecution and the Division of Criminal Justice. So while the New Jersey State Police has always targeted drug traffickers, we've recently been directed to redouble our efforts focusing on opioids, specifically heroin and fentanyl. Traditionally, our detectives have targeted traffickers based on information we receive by a variety of sources. What we're doing different in recent years is adding analysis, professional analysis, to this game. In the intelligence section, we have developed an analytical capability, while we also have worked with our partners in the Regional Operations Intelligence Center, otherwise known as the ROC, and the Office of Drug Monitoring and Analysis. This has allowed our detectives to fine-tune our approach to who we're targeting. This particular investigation began a little more than 1 month ago when the Office of Drug Monitoring and Analysis published information about several brands or stamps of heroin-laced fentanyl that was responsible for the high number of overdoses that the Attorney General referenced. It was at that time that the detectives in the Opioid Enforcement Task Force were directed to focus on finding the source of this fentanyl and heroin. At the same time, Homeland Security investigations also began focusing on the source of the heroin and fentanyl brands. Rather than work in competition, we decided to work together and work parallel. Each agency focused on a different level of the trafficking organization in an effort to finally get to the source. We were in daily contact with our partners in Homeland Security investigations, and sharing information back and forth was crucial to the success that we are speaking about today. Last week, Thursday to be specific, we caught a break when information was developed indicating that an individual we were familiar with, the state police was familiar with from a prior arrest, was likely involved in the milling of this heroin and fentanyl. Our members worked hard at trying to identify where this individual was because we had lost contact with him. And by the hard work of our detectives, adding in a little bit of luck, we found this individual around noontime last Thursday. We surveilled this individual and were able to follow him to the location in Harrison that the Attorney General mentioned. A few more hours of surveillance and a few other investigative techniques led us to the point where we had enough probable cause to get into the apartment and recognize that it was a drug mill, and in fact it was the heroin and fentanyl mill we suspected it was, connected to these stamps that the Attorney General had mentioned. As the Attorney General mentioned, some of the items seized from there, but we had over 3 kilos of fentanyl, 1 kilo of heroin, 29 coffee grinders, which is used in the milling of heroin. There was an associated search warrant executed the following day in Secaucus, at an apartment in Secaucus, another high-end apartment, where over $193,000 in cash and 2 high-end vehicles, including a Bentley, a very rare Bentley, was seized. All this goes to show and prove our thoughts that this was a long-running, very successful operation. There was obviously a lot of cash proceeds that came out of this. And our preliminary information has us believe this mill has been running maybe as long as 2 years. So with that, I'd like to turn the podium over to Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Brett Dreyer of the United States Homeland Security Investigations.
And we've been watching a press conference with New Jersey Attorney General Guber Graywall and other state officials in Newark announcing the takedown of a major heroin mill in New Jersey. They say this mill is responsible for distributing heroin laced with fentanyl that they believe is responsible for 84 overdose deaths in the state this past year. The drug mill, they say, was operated out of a luxury apartment in Harrison, New Jersey. Investigators say the heroin was packaged into wax packages with stamps that branded the heroin. They say over the past week they've been comparing the heroin at the mill to scenes of where there have been overdoses across the region. They say this mill may be linked to producing up to 15,000 doses of heroin, and they are concerned there may still be some of this drug circulating across the area. So far, they say 3 people have been arrested in connection with the case. The Attorney General says they are still in the early stages of their investigation. This is a story we will continue to follow throughout the day.